Round one. Ready, go! Knockout! Round two. Ready, go! Knockout! Round three. Ready, go! Knockout! 消死千本 Round one. Ready, go! Knockout! Round two. Ready, go! Knockout! Round three. Ready, go! Come on! Knockout! Round 4. Ready, go! Knockout! Round 5. Ready, go! Knockout! You can't beat me with that! Round 1. Ready, go! Knockout! Round 2. Ready, go! Knockout! Round 3. Ready, go! Knockout! Round 4. Ready, go! Knockout!
あなたにはクンフーが足りないわ。
Round one. Ready, go! Knockout! Round two. Ready, go! Knockout! Round three. Ready, go! Knockout!
ザコが二度と面見せんじゃねえ。
Round one. Ready, go! Knockout! Round two. Ready, go! Knockout! Round three. Ready, go! Knockout! Round four. Ready, go! Knockout! Round five. Ready, go! Knockout!
そのまま床を舐めてな。
If you take it personally, then you probably need to look in the mirror and see why you're taking it personally. But Xbox has really had a tumultuous 2 weeks. And then yesterday we got this presentation, and everything was pretty much what we initially expected. Back in January, of course, we were talking about smaller Xbox titles coming to other platforms. Games like Sea of Thieves, that's obviously probably reached a player cap on the Xbox. Games like, of course, Hi-Fi Rush, something that, I mean, you know, it's not really a flagship Microsoft title. It was just a game that a lot of people enjoyed because it was a high-quality game. And everyone was okay with that. Like, nobody really cared. They're like, oh, you know, that's cool. You know, they've done stuff like Ori on other platforms. Sony has MLB The Show on other platforms. It's just kind of the way that some of these companies are looking to extend revenue and get additional revenue from other platforms. But then 2 Sundays ago, the sky fell out. And the stars were showing because all of a sudden, all of these places started reporting that Starfield.
Round 1. Ready, go! Knockout! Round 2. Ready, go! Knockout! Round 3. Ready, go! Knockout! Round 4. Ready, go! Excellent!
On the battlefield, you'd be dead.
Hey, Novin. Yeah, I might do. Also, I picked up Skull and Bones as well, so I'm gonna check that game out. Yeah, okay.
Starfield, the big flagship title for Xbox in 2023, was going to be coming to the PlayStation 5. But beyond that, Starfield was coming out this year for the PlayStation 5, coinciding with the launch of new Starfield DLC. But beyond that, Starfield was also, these companies, Microsoft was actually getting more PS5 dev kits to work on stuff like Starfield. And then it started this snowball effect. It started this snowball effect of a lack of accountability. There is no accountability in video games journalism anymore. Nobody can bear to say, you know what? I screwed this up. I was wrong about it. What do? They double down. They say, oh, things must have changed. It was a plausible thing. There were discussions about it. Because after we learned about Starfield, we then started hearing about Gears of War and Indiana Jones. What the hell do you expect people to think when reputable gaming journalists and reputable gaming websites are the ones providing this information? They're the ones providing this stuff out into the open and saying that, oh, this is a real possibility. So then people start talking about it because, of course, it's an interesting topic. I made videos on the potential of games like Starfield.
Want to spend more time tailoring every trainer? Shopify's tools help you build your brand, like themes to make your store one of a kind, and product pages that you can update with a few clicks. Get the right tools at Shopify.
And we're back with March Sadness. The team is looking down the barrel of a 4:55 meeting.
They're gassed, Jill.
Games like Gears of War, games like Indiana Jones coming out on other platforms. But why did I make those videos? Because you have faith in these industry people, in these journalists who go to all these events, who schmoz with the VPs of these companies, who hang out with them, who break bread with them. You assume that these people know what the hell they're talking about. But do they? Do they actually? Or is this just flinging crap on the wall? And then if something sticks, then you take your victory lap. And if it doesn't stick, you say, oh, plans must have changed. I'm sorry. But there is no way in less than 2 weeks, Microsoft completely shifted their business model of bringing all of these major high caliber games to other platforms because Twitter was upset about it. Twitter is not a real place. Twitter is not real life. Twitter makes up a very small incremental amount of real people. It's just that you have these idiots on Twitter who have these loud voices for some reason, and people just latch on to them, and they're like, yeah, you speak for me, even though in the real world, you go up to someone and you talk about Twitter, they'll probably say, get out of my face with your musty breath. Like, I don't get it. And the only person who had any accountability leading up to this Xbox presentation was Nate the Hate. When he
Round one. Ready, Round 2. Ready, go! Knockout! Round 3. Ready, go! Knockout! Round 4. Ready, go! Knockout! Round 5. Ready, go! Knockout!
He said, hey, you know what?
You're
I've
no
kind of
match
heard
for
that maybe
me."
this Starfield stuff was wrong. And what happened? What happened? Were people like, oh, thanks, Nate. You know, thanks for being honest about this. Thanks for clearing things up. No, people attacked him. People said he's a flip-flopper. Journalists from these websites that reported that Starfield was coming and Indiana Jones was coming and Gears of War were coming, they attacked him. But he was right. Where's the apology for Nate? Where is the discerning look towards these gaming journalists all of a sudden? So what, they double down. They're like, oh, well, Phil said that maybe in 5 to 10, shut up. 5 to 10 years. Nobody cares about 5 to 10 years. In 5 to 10 years, video game consoles, aside from Nintendo, could be completely different. And that's meaning both PlayStation and Xbox. When you look at what we've learned about PlayStation thus far this year and what's happening within their business model, things can drastically change. But there's no proof of that change happening in the intermittent. I don't understand. I don't understand why there's no accountability for these gaming journalists and why we still give these people platforms and why we still listen to some of these people with their insider information when it's tragically wrong. And I say tragically because this, of course, started a ripple effect that, you know, I was caught up in it. I was caught up in talking about all of this Xbox stuff, but it goes beyond just people like me. My editor, who hasn't edited anything in a very long time, but he's still getting paid, so I need to put him to work at some point in time. But Brett sent me TikToks with millions and millions of views of people, you know, of these younger individuals saying, oh, Halo's coming to PlayStation 5. Get ready for Halo on PlayStation 5. Xbox is going multi-platform. They're getting out of the console thing. When you watch that Xbox presentation, pretend like the Starfield stuff never happened. Pretend like nobody said anything about Gears of War. Pretend that nobody said anything about Indiana Jones. Pretend that none of that happened. And we're right back to where we were in January when things made sense. When it was like, hey, you know what? Some smaller games from Xbox are probably going to go to other platforms. Like they have been for a while now. It's not big flagship IPs, but hey, Sea of Thieves, that makes sense. Look at the games that we learned about that were the 4 games, because those games ended up being confirmed by Famitsu and other places. Sea of Thieves, Grounded, Hi-Fi Rush, and Pentiment. Those are the 4 games. You could combine those 4 games in terms of impact, and they're not as big as Starfield. They're not as big as Gears of War. They're not as big as Indiana Jones. That's just on their own. When you combine Indiana Jones, Gears of War, and Starfield, that's just a huge, monstrous beast. It completely changed the narrative. And I was going on podcasts, and I was making videos on this channel after I learned about some of these things and really thought about it and started looking into stuff and talking to people. And I was like, wait, this isn't going to be a big deal. This presentation has been overhyped. They're not going third party. We learned about new hardware coming from Xbox. We already know about it because it was in the Microsoft Activision Blizzard leaks with all those court documents. We already know that they're doing new hardware, but they had to come out and say, yeah, we're doing new hardware. They had to come out and say, no, Starfield and Indiana Jones are not going third party. There's just some smaller games. And why is that? Because of the hoopla, the nonsense, and the bullshit started up by these quote-unquote gaming journalists. Some of them wearing the Xbox brand, some of them just being a part of the conversation, and it's ridiculous. The fact that there's absolutely no accountability for these people, and it's just business as usual the next day, and nobody cares about it. Nobody's looking at it. I'm not saying attack these people, but just stop rocking with them. If they're constantly wrong about major things, why would they get minor things correct? And the absolute fact that Nate the Hate was the only one who had the balls to come out and say, hey, you know what? I don't think Starfield's happening. I think that information, it wasn't good information. And for him to be attacked and ridiculed and people questioning his integrity, but they're not questioning the integrity of all these other jackasses who came out with this stuff that was inherently, massively wrong, just shows you how crazy this is. It shows you where people's loyalties lie. People don't want to hear the truth. People don't want to hear the actual things. They want these grandiose things. They want these massive things because they're embedded and embroiled in some console war. Some of these people are 50, 60 years old, involved in a console war. And you know what? Games journalism fuels this. They fuel this mindset. They fuel this nonsense. There needs to be accountability. If I'm wrong about something, hey, you know what, guys? I'm wrong. I'm sorry. You don't want to believe me anymore? That's fine. But I do feel like I know what I'm talking about at least some of the time. And if I don't, hey, I probably won't talk about it. Hold these journalists to a higher standard. This is why mainstream media is in shambles. And this is why people are starting to turn their back on mainstream media, because they plant these narratives and they give this incorrect information. But people don't look into things. They just believe everything that is said. And then when these people are wrong, they just move on. It's business as usual. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And I'm heated up over this. And like I said, I'm going to lose some friends over this. I'm going to lose some colleagues and stuff like that. I don't care. If you got a problem with what I say, that's your problem. That ain't my problem. And you know what? You want to unfollow me? You want to unsubscribe from the channel? Be my guest. Because I would rather keep it real, and I would rather be honest than be a fraud, than to talk out my ass, than to perpetuate false information constantly. How about that Nintendo Direct, people? Let me know what you think of this in the comments section down below. And as always, guys, thank you for watching this video. Give props to Nate the Hate. He was the only one who had balls to come out and buck against the grain as far as insiders are concerned. And what happened to him? They tried to crucify the guy. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. And as always, subscribe if you're new, unsubscribe if you hate me, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.
Vodafone. Get the epic new Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra with 6 months half price and say hello to its game-changing AI technology.
Speech access was take me to Holborn. Take me to London Holborn. Take me to London Holborn. Go back.
Round one. Ready, go! Excellent! Round two. Ready, go! Round three. Ready, go!
Mission accomplished.
It's one of the great cosmic mysteries. How it is that someone can go from being a total stranger.
Hi, I'm James May. I'm with The Hook. I'm going to be looking at car chase scenes from film and TV on this laptop and then commenting on them. I don't know what's coming up. I haven't been briefed. This is where we discover just how little I know about the world of film. So here we go. I heard a rumour that this was a real crash that wasn't intended for the film, but they were filming anyway. I don't know if there's any truth in there. That's Daniel Craig, I know that. That's an Aston Martin DBS. He gets a bit of air there. There's someone in the road. He has to swerve, of course, and there's the rollover accident. It looks fairly real. Oh, that's not going to buff out. He wouldn't survive that in a DB5, would he? So that's an Aston Martin DBS, which I did drive when it was quite new, which is a while back now, and it's yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a bit too big and possibly a little bit too traditional in some ways for my taste. I'm more of a Ferrari man.
What is your favourite Bond car and why?
Favourite Bond car? Obviously this is all to do with being young at the time and impressionable and being at the cinema with a girl I really liked, but it's the original white Lotus Esprit from The Spy Who Loved Me. And then I saw one in real life a week or so later in Sheffield, I think it was. White one, the same Wolf Race wheels being backed out of a dealership, and it was the most exciting thing I think I've ever seen. If I were ever going to own a Bond car or a Bond car tribute, yes. Probably a terrible car by modern standards. I mean, quite feeble, but doesn't matter. It looks brilliant. Oh, Back to the Future, a film I've never actually seen. That's one of my proudest boasts. I've never seen Back to the Future, and I've never seen The Blues Brothers, and I've never seen The Wizard of Oz. It's got a dog in it. Is the dog driving? No, it's radio controlled. Ooh, there's some nice old school LED numbers on something to make it look high tech. That's not true. It's disappeared, and he's pioneering the padded gilet there. 88 miles an hour. Wow. I've never driven a DeLorean. It's, oh God, it's an interesting car. Well, the car itself is quite interesting. The story behind it and the various scandals, do we call them that? They are quite interesting. They remain rare. It was a sadly underperforming car with a bit like the Lotus, actually, that we were just talking about, with an undersized engine for the job. Looked quite good, but I'm a bit, can I say meh? I'm a bit meh about the DeLorean. You know, yeah. Whatevs.
If there was one feature in a car that doesn't exist at the moment, but you want to in the future, what would that be and why?
I'm not particularly bothered about self-driving. I don't need a flying car. I'd rather just be in an aeroplane. I mean, they do exist, but they've never been successful. I think amphibious. The Esprit in James Bond is a submarine. I think a submarine is possibly going a bit far, but a car that I could just drive into the river and use as a boat and then drive out. I mean, it has been done, but it's never been done quite well enough. I'd dig that. Apart from anything else, the river is underused in London. Look at the size of that hair. That's huge hair. And it's taken off. That's not real. See, this This is before proper CGI had been invented, isn't it? That's bits of film put on top of other bits of film, and it's quite obvious. But, you know, it's a flying car. It's a very enduring idea, flying cars. So we had Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, obviously. There were ideas about flying cars in the early days of the car from people like Henry Ford. And then we had this, and then we had Harry Potter's Flying Ford Anglia. And we used to draw flying cars in the backs of our maths exercise books when I was at school. And they were ridiculous because they didn't have wings. We had this idea that, well, a bit like they do, cars could be levitated by anti-gravity or something like that. And then, because you didn't have to provide them with sort of propellers or jet engines or wings or tailplanes, you could then fill it with machine guns and vodka bars and disco lighting effects. I'm not a fan of musicals on the whole. I find them a bit cheesy. Cheese?
Dad, really?
I know what this is. This is the in-betweeners, the Fiat Cinquecento. This is just fabulous because they got the car exactly right.
Dad,
for these useless
really?
youths.
Really? It might not look much. It's a great little runner, and you won't be able to get up enough speed in it to kill yourself. I don't want it. Come on. It's a special edition. I can't go to school in it.
Well, if I was a girl, I think whoever drove this was pretty trendy.
But you should have warned me.
Yeah, but you're his mum.
Why are you saying these things? Oh, Christ, it's got a tape deck.
See, that's good.
No, it's not.
Get your hands on the latest game-changing tech at Currys, like claiming Galaxy Buds 2 Pro and Smart Tag 2 with a stunning new Samsung Galaxy S24 series. With its powerhouse processor and show-stopping display, it handles gaming and entertainment like a boss. And with the optimized battery, you can scroll and stream for even longer. From $29.99 a month on ID Mobile. And you get free next-day delivery. In-store at Currys or online at carphonewarehouse.com.
Have your broadband bills gone up? Check if you can save at uswitch.com. If you're one of the millions out of contract, you could save £174 by switching now. So, to avoid paying more than you need to, visit uswitch.com.
Reynolds and has been adapted for video by me. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling. Let's dive right into things. Not many game franchises managed to ascend to the status of iconic, but Tomb Raider is undoubtedly one of them. Despite the original trilogy being released for multiple platforms, Lara Croft quickly became synonymous with the PS1, standing toe-to-toe with Crash Bandicoot as one of the console's mascots. Since then, of course, Lara has been practically everywhere, yet 2024 marks the first occasion that the original trilogy has been fully revamped for modern audiences via Tomb Raider 1-3 Remastered. We say revamped, but these are the same games you know and love from the late 90s, albeit with the additional expansions included for the first time on console. What developer Aspyr has done here, however, is give all three titles a much needed lick of paint, boosting the visuals significantly whilst also adding in an optional modern control scheme for those who might not get on with the aging tank controls. Similar additions include a surprisingly robust photo mode and health bars for boss encounters as well. First up, the visuals. This is easily the biggest change that's been made to the trilogy, and goodness gracious, is it a welcome one. What's great is you can flip between the original graphics and the modern remaster just at the touch of the plus button, much like 343 Industries' Halo Anniversary and Lizard Cube's Wonderboy the Dragon's Trap. When you cast your eyes over the revamped graphics for the first time, you'd be forgiven for thinking that this is how the games have always looked, but flipping back to the original style demonstrates just how much of an upgrade the compilation has received. Everything's been given a touch-up, including character models, environmental assets, textures, lighting, and the menu screens. Not only that, but the new visuals also come with an upgraded frame rate, allowing all three games to run at a silky smooth 60 frames a second, whilst flipping back to the original graphics halves this. for some reason. We're especially appreciative of the frame rate boost as it makes the somewhat archaic gameplay feel much more manageable and fresh. Granted, the visual upgrade doesn't always work in the game's favor. There are some areas where the revamped lighting makes environments appear darker than the original releases, while others come across much brighter. The darker areas can make navigation
Round 1. Ready, go!
Take that! Yeah!
Knockout! Round 2. Ready, go! Knockout! Round 3. Ready, go!
Take that!
Knockout!
Mission accomplished.
Trickier than it realistically needs to be, and we found that switching back to the original visuals helped us find our way. Had we been unable to do this, we might have had to resort to some glances at a YouTube walkthrough. It's not ideal, and perhaps a bit more consistency across old and new would have been beneficial. Onto the games themselves. If you've got no prior experience with the original Tomb Raider trilogy, it's important to understand what you're getting yourself into here. These titles represent the genesis of 3D action-adventure games way before the likes of Uncharted came along and introduced some much-needed cinematic flair. With that in mind, there's less focus on flashy shootouts in Tomb Raider 1 to 3 and a lot more on exploration and platforming. Think of them more like puzzle games with a bit of action sprinkled in, and you're pretty much on the right track. A lot of Tomb Raider's challenge came from the simple act of just navigating the environment. Even jumping from one platform to another requires a certain degree of caution so as not to plummet into a pit of spikes. It represents a refreshing change of pace in an age where game difficulty is largely tied to enemy encounters, but those unfamiliar with how Tomb Raider controls may have a tough time getting to grips with it. Thankfully, there are a couple of ways to make life easier for both you and Lara. First up, each game in the trilogy allows you to explore Lara's mansion home at your leisure via the main menu, so you can practice your moves for as long as necessary, all the while ensuring that her dastardly butler is safely locked away in the freezer, of course. I'm sorry, Chris Barry. The second way is to simply switch the original controls for a revamped scheme for newcomers. This swaps out the tank controls for complete 360-degree movement, whilst also remapping other buttons to bring the games more in line with modern action-adventure games. For example, the original controls required you to press X to holster and unholster your guns and B to fire, but the modern system remaps this to ZL and ZR respectively. Admittedly, because Ollie was already familiar with the original games, he's stuck with the tank option, but me, I'm brand new to the series and I went straight for the revamped, I've got to be honest. Upgrades aside, you're getting a lot of bang for your buck with this collection. 3 full games with 3 additional expansions is nothing to sniff at, and since each title will take roughly 10 to 15 hours to beat, you're looking at a reasonable commitment. That said, you can almost certainly add more time if you forget to save your game, and this is one area that we sincerely wish was upgraded alongside the graphics. Manual saving is practically mandatory since there's no autosave whatsoever, and it's quite easy to be on a solid streak, make it through a couple of levels before dying, and find yourself right back at the start. It's frustrating, to be honest, and this is compounded only further by the convoluted menu system, which requires allows you to navigate to a book icon, flip from the load game page to the save game page, and then bookmark your progress. And there have been multiple occasions where we've accidentally loaded a previous game instead of saving, and that's a bad time. We really hope a quick save option is added in a later update, or better yet, autosave. That would be even better. Don't take away the manual saving, just have it as an option. It's not a deal breaker by any means, but having to manually save your game, especially on console, is a relic we're happy to leave entombed in the 90s. Tomb Raider 1-3 Remastered is one of Aspire's most accomplished projects to date, successfully giving 3 of gaming's most iconic titles a much-needed lick of paint, whilst also upgrading the controls to give newcomers a welcome leg up. Some of the lighting is a bit off with the new visuals, and the need to manually save your game is a big no-no in 2024, but if you're curious as to how Lara Croft got her start in gaming, then this is easily the best way to experience the original trilogy. You've reached the end of the review. That means it's time for Alex's personal thoughts, and they're mixed, I'm afraid to say. I actually started playing the first level in all 3 of the games just because that was what the embargo would allow us to do in regards to releasing footage before release, and you know, that's fine. But it did mean that my experience was not as solid as I was hoping it would be. The first game, you know, it took me a while to get the controls down and to understand what was going on, but then, yeah, loved it. And the second game, kind of more of the same, with a few more beginner traps, but at the same time, I don't know, still very much enjoyed it. But the third one, I just found incredibly frustrating, I'm afraid to say. I found it really tough to know when I was making progress, and that's not a hugely bad thing, and it's something that I could break through if I really put some time and effort into it, which I plan to do, but, you know, first impressions, not amazing for the third game. But having said that, 1 and 2 are absolutely my bag. 2 has some weird jumps, I'm not gonna lie, and sometimes it just doesn't jump. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but it just doesn't jump. But I could play 1 all day, and I must admit, I thought I was gonna go back to the classic graphics, but I really like the 60 frames a second. I want to play with the classic graphics, but at 60 FPS, is that so much to ask? It's not a big deal. The new graphics look nice as well. Do correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I do find that the modern controls actually make some of the moves harder to do. I don't know whether it's just me or whether it's because all of a sudden, you know, you don't actually have those sort of like forward is always wherever Lara is facing will go forward, you know, tank controls. But I just found some of the movement to be quite tricky, and I don't fully know why, but it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. Overall, I've been having fun so far, and I'm really looking forward to playing more of 1 and 2, and who knows, when I've played those, maybe I'll give 3 another go as well.
Welcome back to another episode of Before You Buy, the show where we give you some straight-up gameplay and our first impressions of the latest games releasing. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today we're going to ransack precious cultural heritage sites and put a few more species on the endangered list, because we're looking at Tomb Raider 1-3 Remastered, starring Lara Croft. Originally released in 1996, 97, and 98, respectively, on PlayStation 1 and PC, it is impossible to overstate just how much of a cultural phenomenon the Tomb Raider games were. Lara Croft was an icon up there with Mario and Sonic the Hedgehog, and it basically happened overnight. The advertising sold these games as basically kind of Indiana Jones combined with female Duke Nukem. Totally over the top, but the actual games are really, they're nothing like that. Instead of non-stop actions, they're all about exploring sprawling caves and ruins, solving puzzles, fighting enemies, and some awkward combat, and honestly, a lot of platforming. A lot of the platforming really requires pinpoint precision, too. The original games are honestly pretty divisive, to put it mildly. A lot of people love these old games, but there's plenty that just cannot stand the dreaded tank controls, or they just don't have the patience for this game's form of slow, methodical platforming, exploration, and puzzle solving. The simple fact is that a whole hell of a lot of people think these games are outdated in their visuals and especially in their controls, and it's those concerns this Asper-developed remaster seems to be trying to address. They've given the games a new coat of paint and a modern control scheme that does manage to make these games a little more palatable to modern audiences, but after spending some time with it, I'm not 100% sure they did enough. Honestly, a lot of this collection feels like it's a bare-bones port rather than a full remaster, and depending on who you ask, that's probably either a very bad thing or a very good thing. Now, that might sound kind of negative, but I do really appreciate the work that they did to upgrade the graphics. They did it in a way where it retains the feel of the original games. They seem very dedicated to making these versions of the games as accurate as possible to the intent of the originals. And because of that, the updated graphics may not really serve to impress per se, but I think they hit a pretty good balance of making everything look the same but not terrible to look at. But I'll go ahead and say this. The remaster does one of my favorite things you can with re-releases. It lets you switch between the remastered graphics and the original graphics with the push of a button. I love it when games do this, even if it does severely limit where they can actually remaster things. But everything in Tomb Raider 1, 2, and 3 are exactly the same as the original versions. The abstract, Escher-like environments and all. They're not fooling anybody into thinking this isn't anything but an updated PlayStation 1 game. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It is a pretty garish and ugly game at times, but that's just them being ruthlessly accurate to the original. The little flourishes they do add are quite nice, like the slow falling through holes in the cave in the first level of Tomb Raider 1, for example. It's not all perfect. There's some odd choices in there, like this bizarre depth effect on climbable surfaces that can't possibly be working as intended. It's supposed to be a bare wall texture, but it looks like a portal to hell or something. I don't know what they were thinking here. The new graphics are a matter of taste, but I overall do like them. They do capture that mid-90s 3D game aesthetic of just slapping a bunch of royalty-free images onto some vague polygons meant to evoke the feeling of being in an actual place. The first game is the most abstract and bare in terms of visuals, and by the third game, you get some areas that vaguely resemble actual locations, but like with most PS1 games, you kind of have to squint and use your imagination. Which is, by the way, if you remember the advertising versus what the game looked like in the first place, you probably were doing plenty of squinting and using your imagination. If anything, the third game kind of goes a little overboard with the visuals. Sometimes it's hard to tell where you can even stand in some of these levels, especially with the remastered graphics on. I mean, just look at this cacophony of visual garbage. It's so abstract that Picasso would be like, hey, that's a little much, my friend. The visuals may require you to use your imagination with what you're looking at to understand it, but something that doesn't require your imagination are the controls. They require your obedience instead. If you're already a card-carrying Tomb Raider junkie, the tank controls are not going to be the hardest thing to get used to, but even if you've played the games multiple times, you can struggle, if not necessarily overall, at least in getting used to it. When I jump back into these games, I'm always like, oh yeah, that's right. Controls used to be very bad in games. It's the jumping. Like, the way you have to press the jump button and then a directional button to jump a certain way always takes way too long to get used to. It's in opposition to every other game ever made, where if you move into a direction, then you press jump. That's how that works. It screws with my head every time. But here's the thing. Once you do get over the steep hurdle of the controls, there is a certain satisfaction to the movement here. It's stiff and it's slow, but it works. Once you get the hang of it, you're pretty in control of every move you make, and all the usual guesswork with jumping goes away. It just boils down to pure technical mastery. These games are built to use tank controls, and they're built in a grid, so mathematical precision is pretty much required. These games are less action games and more the true spiritual successor to the original Prince of Persia games. They're cinematic platformers at heart, and if you go into them with that mindset, it can be like trying to solve a fun control puzzle. Of course, it's still a platformer with tank controls, so some people are just fundamentally not going to be on board with that. And I'm saying all that to talk about the new modern controls, which do work most of the time, but they are not the catch-all for fixing these three games' problems. With modern controls, instead of moving like a car with legs, you have a full range of motion. For shootouts and areas with some space to move around, it's really good. But when things get a little more claustrophobic, the modern controls become more obvious with what their problems are. The main issue with the original controls, Lara moves independently from the camera, and with the modern controls, how Lara moves is dependent on where the camera is. If the camera was good, that would not be a problem. But I am addressing the problem, and it's the camera. In tight environments, the modern camera is constantly getting caught or clipping through things or bouncing all over the place. Sometimes it gets stuck. You get caught in a loop of running into a wall over and over just because the camera's pointed the wrong way. Sometimes it's completely impossible to see what you're doing, and in situations where the camera zooms out to give you a view of the environment, it's fine when you're playing with tank controls, but with modern, wow, you're going to start running in a different direction a lot of the time. Sometimes it means you run off a cliff because the camera suddenly switches perspectives, and that sucks a lot. I was just about ready to give up on the new control scheme entirely at first and just grin and bear it with the old tank controls, but I gave it another shot and spent some time with it. Even with those complaints, for the most part, it ended up working. In general, I was able to move around levels faster with the modern setup, and in situations where you need to quickly respond to stuff, it's just the obviously superior option. But then there are a few instances where you have to make a perfect jump or go into a tight space and the camera just goes nuts and you want to turn the game off. Not for a while, but forever. It's a shame there's not really any definitive control scheme here because they got pretty close to modern, but it's not quite good enough as a means to ease new players into the old game. It's just too janky. Anytime you have to do a long jump with the original controls, all you have to do is take a step back. It'll always work. But with modern, you're never completely sure. There are so many situations where these games give you one square to make a perfect jump, and the modern controls always struggle and make things harder than they need to be. I eventually got the real precision jumps to work pretty good by using the D-pad in certain situations, but without the ability to just take a step backwards in modern mode, there's always an element of guesswork to the jumping. Combat was never these games' strong suit, but that part of the game it's definitely more tolerable with modern controls because you just run behind enemies and easily pump them full of lead. Obviously, the modern controls, they work, but they never quite feel as good as they should, which stinks because these games can be really hard. 2 in particular, but especially 3, they really have no mercy, and this collection does not ease the difficulty at all. There are no auto saves, but at least you can save anywhere manually, and there's no limited saving like the PlayStation version, so at least there's that. But if you forget to save or just do what I do and constantly select load when you meant save, you're going to be replaying certain sections of these games a lot, and there's a lot of frustration there. But if there is one thing this collection manages to do, it really manages to hit all the right nostalgia buttons. The moment I turned this one on and heard the fantastic ambient track that played over the title in Tomb Raider 1, I was like, oop, warm blanket, man. If there's one thing about these games that universally holds up, might I add, it is the frickin' music. It's certainly not the CGI cutscenes or story. The CGI's gotten some upscaling, but it's just as rudimentary as ever. Even if they do improve incrementally from each game, in today's environment where it could take 5 years plus for a new entry to a franchise to come out, the fact they were able to crank these games out every year was impressive. And while the improvements to each one were kind of small, each game does at least look better than the previous game. This is a very minor complaint, but it would have been nice to get a different base model for Lara in each game to really illustrate how the games change, but instead they just used a single model based off the one from the third game. Everything else got remastered so close to the original, it's kind of annoying to switch to the classic graphics for the first time and see Lara's hair looking completely different. I know, minor complaint, but when everything otherwise is so close, it's really easy to nitpick. Lara's movement gets a few slight upgrades with each game. The second game allowed you to climb walls and slide down ropes. The third added the revolutionary ability to crouch and crawl, and in my opinion, the second game is still the best. Even if there are things to like about all of them, it just hits that sweet spot between graphics that actually kind of look like something and complex level designs. The first game's a little too basic. The third game's levels are sprawling mazes that I constantly get lost in. The second game's levels are big, but I just feel like I have a better idea where I'm going. I feel like it's where they really had the level design correct. I'm not here for the stories, because in the original Tomb Raider games, they barely mattered. But that's also not like something that really does matter, because if you think these games are fun, like they're fun to screw around in, like lock up Jeeves in the walk-in refrigerator, swan dive into some rocks, stuff like that. Also, you're not just getting the base games here. Each game also comes with a level pack. Tomb Raider 1 has Unfinished Business. Tomb Raider 2 has the Golden Mask. Tomb Raider 3 has the Lost Artifact. These bonus levels are hard as hell, but I'm glad they're here. It kind of bugs me that there isn't a complete collection in terms of things, though. There were more than 3 Tomb Raider games developed by Core before the franchise was taken over by Crystal Dynamics, and it would have been nice to get those games together in one package. Sure, 4, 5, and 6 are definitely worse than the first 3, but for completion's sake, it also would have been nice. I mean, at least the price point is low. Just $30 for all 3 games is fair, I think. It is another indication that this isn't necessarily a big budget remaster, though, more of a glorified port. If you want to see what a real modernized version of one of these games looks like, play the Tomb Raider Anniversary game from Crystal Dynamics, because this collection is absolutely not that. It has a few concessions to modern sensibilities, like, a stable frame rate, which is nice, and a new control option that sort of works okay. Hopefully will get patched to work a little bit better. I think if there's anything that I have on a wish list in terms of these games, it's that. But otherwise, it's the original games pretty much exactly as you may or may not remember them. It's well made and accurate to a fault, and that does limit the appeal. These games have a steep learning curve. They're often relentlessly difficult, and they have a very slow, measured pace that some people might call boring. I don't. I have a soft spot for these titles, even though going back to the old school controls, it's a bit of a struggle. It's kind of irritating when you have played games that control smoothly and nicely. So in the end, do I recommend Tomb Raider 1 through 3 Remastered Collection? Well, I'll answer that question with another question. Do you like the PS1 Tomb Raider games? If so, absolutely yes. If there's some stuff here that looks interesting to you, same. Like, if you understand what you're getting into, these are really interesting, fun games that were huge in the mid-90s. If you're watching this footage and recoiling in disgust, though, no. There's no reason to try the games if that's the case. Like, they've done a few things to make these games more appealing to a modern audience, but at the end of the day, these are the original games, warts and all. For some people, that's going to be really good. For some people, it's not. I think with all of the information, it's kind of easy to figure out which camp you're in. And I definitely respect this collection as a form of video game preservation. But you need patience for old school bullshit, basically. And if you don't have it, I don't see you having fun. I love PS1 games. I've played these games multiple times, and I've struggled with them, even in the making of this Before You Buy. That doesn't mean I don't love them. But what about you? Leave us a comment, let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications, and as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at FalconTheHero. We'll see you next time, right here on Game Ranks.
The main hall. Sorry about the crates. I'm having some things put into storage, and the delivery people haven't been yet.
It's showtime! Round 1. Ready, go! Knockout! Round 2. Ready, go! Knockout! Round 3. Ready, go! Knockout! Round 4. Ready, go!
けなどない。
Presenting the Brad Show. The big-time player is here. Round one. Ready, go! Yeah! Round two. Ready, go! Checkmate. Good. Knockout. Round three. Ready, go! Knockout. Round four. Ready, go! Good. Checkmate. Knockout. Round five. Ready, go! Checkmate. Knockout. Might makes right.
You'd better take me seriously.
Round one. Ready, go!